First of all, every doctor's office on the planet has a problem keeping up with the call volume. There's a couple of reasons for that. One of the reasons is because people just want to pick the phone up and call the doctor's office. And when they don't get somebody on the phone, they get irritated, right? So that's a problem. Another problem is, let's say I call up for a refill and I don't get called back for 2 days. That's a problem. Reason why is because this stuff's just floating around in a voicemail somewhere. Now it gets even worse than that. Let's say that a stat lab result that the patient needs to know about comes in at 4:58 on a Friday evening. It may sit in a voicemail till Monday. That's a problem. So CallMyDoc is designed to capture, keep track of, transcribe, and manage anything that a human being cannot answer the phone about. If you look at this spreadsheet, this green part here, right, that's your phone system. We're not replacing the phone system. Got nothing to do with that. What we're doing is bridging the gap between your patient charts and your phone system. Why is that? Well, it's another aspect of what I was saying earlier, something different. 80% of the people calling you are already in a database called patient charts. This middle piece here is a waste of time because people that call in that are already your patients. You're not getting hundreds of new patients a day. Literally 80 plus or minus are patients that you already have, and they're already going to use the phone to call you. So that's a big chunk of what this is about. So we're bridging the gap between the phone system and the patient chart software system. Now, every patient chart software system on the planet has something to track tasks or messages. So in other words, when you call your doctor's office for a refill or whatever, they're not going to just go get the doctor on the exam room with a patient and say, hey, it doesn't work like that. What they do is in that purple part here, in this example, people are typing all that stuff in for the doctor or doctors, et cetera, et cetera. Well, here's how this works. In this picture here, if I press 2 for a refill or lab results, it shoots it straight to us. We transcribe it at basically 100% transcription quality. So it's like, for those 2 types of questions, nobody has to do anything but read and do exactly what it says. I told you that purple stuff already exists. People type it in now. So when people say, what about training? I said, well, the 2 training criteria are, do you know how to read? And do you know what the purple stuff is? Because they already use it now. There's almost no training. Now, here's the other thing. The phone system. These are phone numbers. You can have as many phone numbers as you want. Every phone number is connected to charts. Every phone number can be customized to say or do anything that you want. And because we've done 24 million patient calls today, and we handle 400,000 a month with hundreds of practices, once a call gets into this blue area, we can practically do anything you could ever imagine with it, period. And I mean that literally. What I normally tell people about this is that when it gets to the blue, do not worry about if we can do it. Just say, I wanted to do this, and we'll make it do that. Because it's easier than explaining the bazillion different ways it could be used. So the other reason why we set up a bunch of different phone numbers too, is we focus on what the practice needs and create as many efficient ways as we can. Because it's difficult to get people to man the phones at these practices and do this stuff. So anyways, this is your phone system, right? Now, I'm sure you call the doctor's office or whatever. It says press 1 for this, 2 for that, 3 for this, etc., right? Everybody's got that, more or less. Or some version of that. Now, again, the reason why these are phone numbers is because you don't have to rip out your phone system and change your phone system because we're simply leveraging a feature that was invented in 1987 for call overflow. Some people call it call center overflow. I mean, at the end of the day, because these are phone numbers, the phone system literally thinks that those are either people or call centers. It doesn't care. It doesn't know. And all it cares is that a valid phone number? As long as it is, great. Now, again, the impact on the way your phone system works is almost zero. Because as an example, right, in this picture here, if I press 1, if I call this office and I press 1, phone system should do exactly whatever it's doing right now before we're there. However, there's only one difference. Instead of going to a voicemail, the phone system says, oh, roll a call over to this number after 3 rings, or if that extension is busy. And we kick in and we say, you know, like what hospital are you calling from? You know, a bunch of different information. Again, I'm just giving you examples because the ways that can be customized is infinite. So there's really no way to just say it just does this, because it doesn't. It does whatever you want it to do. But the point is, then this will create a task called a clinical patient case, and it'll be pushed directly to this doctor. Another aspect of this, doing it this way, is because you're never going to have to listen to another voicemail again, look up the patient's chart, and do a bunch of extra stuff. It's just done. You're just reading it. Is because, in this case, medication refills and people calling for lab results, the way they want to run this practice is they just want to transcribe 100%. They'll call them back later. So it's no big deal. Now, when it comes to this chest pain thing, we have an app that can be used that we'll talk about when we get a bit further along here. I just want to make sure I fully explain this. Now, in this case, if somebody wants to schedule, reschedule, or cancel an appointment, we actually have 2 choices there. Now, I would say 95% or higher of all doctor's offices in the United States do not allow you to schedule your own appointments. But if you do, we can schedule, reschedule, and do a bunch of stuff automatically over the phone in 30 to 40 seconds. So if you can't get to the phone and you allow people to schedule their own appointments, we can do it like a person does it. And people love that because it's super easy and convenient. If they can't get somebody on the phone, they don't have to just wait for a call back. If they don't allow that, we could still allow, have an optional feature to allow them to cancel an appointment. And appointment cancellation, in either case, behaves like a person. So in other words, if I try to cancel an appointment and your practice policy is 24-hour cancellation time, I try to cancel it a half hour at a time. It'll say, I'm sorry, we can't do that right now. Call the office back directly. And then in either case, the other thing which we can do is, don't forget, we're connected to charts. We know when your next appointments are. So it'll say something like press 3 or whatever. It tells you when your next appointment is, or multiple appointments. And we can either text or email those back to you. And not only do we send you a text or an email with all the information, but there's a hot link you can click on, and Apple Maps and Google Maps will tell you exactly how to get to your next appointment. So that's super convenient. If you don't allow people to schedule their own appointments through the phone, through CallMyDoc, then we'll at least take down all their information, you know, ask them they want morning, afternoon, whatever, blah, 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 and then shoot it straight into a task inbox. The other thing we have the ability to do, and I don't think people leverage this nearly enough, is we can text information back to people. How many times do people say, what's your fax number? A lot. How many times do people say, what's your patient portal? Where do I send this new patient intake form? Right? Press 9 always goes to a CallMyDoc number, and it says, this is where we're located, blah, 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 all this, whatever you want it to, but basically it's going to tell them, you know, your office location and other information, fax number, etc. Plus it'll say at the end, do you want us to text this back to you? And it says you're calling from such and such a cell phone. Well, when it sends a text back, it texts back all this tons of information. They're all hot links. So, because everybody's got a smartphone, it turns out that out of all the calls we get and Call My Doc, 76% of them are people calling from a cell phone. So when we text it back on their phone, they can just click on it. And like I said, it'll just give them directions, or it could be a link to your website. Your website could be a link to a email address, whatever. Super simple. So that's kind of, the background of how it works during the day.